can't see anything!
December 8th, 2012. Afghanistan. A cold night, a dark sky under which silence had weight. Not a sound, only footsteps. Cautious, muffled, as if the shadows themselves were walking through the mountains. A few men in black uniforms, armed to the teeth, moved through hostile terrain. Each of them knew what they were walking into. They carried with them the responsibility for someone else's life, the life of a man held captive. They had orders, rescue him. And they had a mission, complete it, even if it meant paying the highest price. Deep in the mountains, in Legman province, militants were holding an American doctor named Dilip Joseph. He hadn't come here to fight. He was a humanitarian worker, helping the local population, working with a charitable organization. But everything went wrong in an instant. He was captured by the Taliban. Along with him were 2 Afghans, colleagues. They were released. He was not. Why? Because he was an American. Because they could use him in political games. Because they could demand a ransom for him. The first few hours of captivity were filled with tension. Joseph didn't know if he would be killed or kept for a long time. He didn't know the language, didn't understand what his guards were saying. The only thing he felt was fear. Fear mixed with hope. Someone knew where he was. Someone might try to rescue him. But the question was, would they be in time? U.S. intelligence intercepted alarming information. There was reason to believe the hostage was about to be moved, or possibly even executed. The timing was specific, December 9th. That left only 1 day for planning and action. Command didn't wait. The decision was made swiftly and firmly. Act immediately. The best of the best were brought in. An elite unit, SEAL Team 6. The very same operators who carry out the most difficult and dangerous missions, the ones never written about in the papers. Among them was one man who would play a key role that night, Edward Byers. The preparation was done in the shortest time possible. They had to reach the location on foot, through the mountains. Using a helicopter to insert near the target was too risky. The noise would give them away instantly. So the drop-off happened far away. About 4 hours of movement over rough terrain at night in full combat readiness. Every step was precious. Any stone could be a trap. Any flicker of light, a signal for alarm. They moved in silence. No words, no gestures, only glances. Everyone understood a mistake would cost more than the mission. It would cost lives, not just theirs, but the hostages too. A forced march in full gear, through mountainous terrain, under the cover of night. That was a test even for the most trained soldiers. But these were not just military men. These were people who had endured the impossible to get the job done. They were trained to endure, to remain silent, to act fast and flawlessly. 4 hours later, they reached a position near the target. Ahead stood a simple Afghan structure made of clay, unremarkable, like hundreds of others in the area. But inside was the man they had come for. Time was running out. It was time to act. They began approaching the house. Everything was going according to plan until one of the militants noticed movement. At first, he didn't realize these weren't locals. He hesitated but eventually took a step back to raise the alarm. It was at that very moment that the situation changed dramatically. The commander gave the signal. The first to breach the building was Nikola Chek, a petty officer first class, a veteran, fearless and sharp. He managed to take several steps inside, but the militant, already with his finger on the trigger, opened fire. Chek fell. He was mortally wounded almost instantly. The team didn't realize it right away. There was no time for emotion in moments like these. Following him into the house was Edward Byers. He saw one of the militants reaching for a weapon and, without hesitation, opened fire. The room was dark. Everything happened in a matter of seconds. Byers caught movement. A shadow, a voice, some rustling. He lunged forward and literally leapt onto the next militant. A short but brutal struggle ensued. He grabbed the militant by the throat, holding him down until the other operators arrived. At the same time, he heard someone speaking English. That was unusual. In situations like this, none of the locals ever spoke English. Byers instantly realized it was the hostage, Dilip Joseph. He immediately repositioned himself, turned, and shielded him with his own body. Without hesitation. In that moment, he didn't even know where the next bullet might come from. But he covered Joseph and continued restraining the second militant. All of this happened almost simultaneously. Fractions of a second. Instincts. Experience. Training. Once the room was under control, the team checked everyone. Dilip was unharmed. He was alive. But Nicholas Sheck was lying on the floor. Byers, also a trained medic, immediately began providing aid. He did everything he could to save his comrade. Everything he had been taught, everything he knew, he used it. But the wound was too severe. When they confirmed the house was fully cleared and no further threats remained, the team sent the signal. Hostage secured. It was the long-awaited phrase they had walked, risked, and sacrificed for. It was immediately followed by the call for extraction. The helicopter was already en route. All they had to do now was hold the position and wait. In the mountains, that wasn't so easy. Any sound could attract attention from other militants, which meant they might not be alone. Byers continued treating Nick Check. He never left his side, not even for a moment. He had no right to give up, even when it became clear that hope was almost gone. For all 40 minutes of the flight to Bagram Air Base, he tried to save his teammate. Until the very end. When the helicopter landed, the doctors were already prepared to receive the wounded, but Check died from his injuries en route. He gave his life saving another man. It was what he had been prepared for, what he had joined the SEALs for. Joseph, once out of shock, could hardly believe he had actually been rescued. He would later say that he realized just how close death had come only when he saw one of the operators shield him with his body. This wasn't just a soldier. This was a man who decided it's better for him to take the bullet than the one he was there to protect. Edward Byers was awarded the highest U.S. military decoration, the Medal of Honor, a mark of extraordinary bravery. But what made it especially significant, he became the first living Navy sailor in decades to receive the award. The last had been a Vietnam War veteran. Byers had never sought fame. He wasn't chasing medals. He simply did what he believed was right, what he had been trained to do. He saved a man and tried to save his brother in arms. As for Nicholas Check, he was posthumously awarded the Navy Cross. His name is forever etched into the history of U.S. Special Operations. He did not live to see the dawn, but he left this world having fulfilled his duty to the very end. Stories like this rarely make front-page headlines. They're not discussed on talk shows, but they are the ones that reveal what true heroes are made of. Silence, night, an order, a step forward. And the decision a person makes in that very second when the cost is a human life. Byers made that choice. And because of him, one came home. After those events, Edward Byers did not give interviews for a long time. He stayed in the shadows as a man of his caliber is meant to. He didn't seek publicity. He believed he had simply done his job. But sooner or later, such stories surface. Acts of bravery like this are too rare to go unnoticed. When he eventually stood at the Medal of Honor ceremony, he didn't stand there as a hero, but as a representative of all those who remain nameless. He spoke little, but every word was a reminder. Behind every act of valor is not one man, but an entire team willing to give everything. He emphasized that he accepted the award not for himself alone, but for all his brothers in arms. And above all, for Nicholas Check. You can never truly understand what it means to be in such a situation unless you've lived through it yourself. But you can feel respect. Respect for those who walk into the unknown to save another, who take a step forward when most would instinctively step back, who cover another with their own body, not knowing if the next second will be their last. That operation became one of those studied in military academies, as an example of courage, team coordination, and instant reaction in the midst of chaos. But for Byers himself, that wasn't what mattered most. He said that if everything happened again, he would do the same. After returning home, Dilip Joseph spoke often of that night. He said it wasn't just a rescue for him, it was a rebirth. He understood the value of freedom. He understood how much a single human life is worth, and who is willing to pay that price. Over the years, the details of the operation become lines in textbooks, and the names of the participants become entries in awards lists. But some things are never forgotten, like the look in a soldier's eyes as he shields you with his body, or the hand that pulls you from the darkness, or the final glance of the one who didn't make it back. The story of Edward Byers and Nicholas Check is not just a wartime episode. It is a reminder that in a world full of cynicism and cruelty, there are those capable of true sacrifice. And as long as such people exist, hope remains. Thank you for watching until the end. If stories like this resonate with you, stories of real courage, duty, and self-sacrifice, subscribe to the channel. Here, we don't just tell of events, but of the people whose actions deserve to be remembered. Many more powerful, true stories are ahead. Don't miss them.